Generation wars. It's really dumb. Some of you might be confused as and comment, what the hell is generation war? It's pretty much the phenomenon of like people hating the next generation or somebody from one generation hating another. Now, I've made videos talking about Gen Alpha, right? But that doesn't mean I hate Gen Alpha. I just don't f with the brain rot that they're consuming on their iPads. And a lot of kids in like younger Gen Alpha were literally just handed an iPad at birth. So a lot of it isn't really their fault. But obviously that doesn't mean we could just sit here and ignore the flaws of every generation. There's 6 main generations right now: the silent generation, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. And since the dawn of time, a lot of generations hated the next one. Boomers hated Gen X hated millennials, so on and so forth. Obviously, it's just certain people in the generations, not everybody. And sometimes people in that generation, I guess, have like some kind of complex where they're like, oh, my generation's the best. Like, as I was growing up, I would hear boomers always say, oh yeah, these kids are growing up with cell phones. They don't know what the a phone book is. Am I right? Or the classic that your parents always say, oh, I would walk uphill 3 mountains to school in the freezing cold for 5 miles. They would give you a whole lore drop on how they got to school. Things have been made more convenient and easier, so I don't have to walk uphill in the snow for 5 miles. Like, I'd much rather have you drive me to school or get picked up by the musty ass school bus than walk uphill for that long. People from the older generations, like, some of them just complain about like how easy we had it, pretty much. And well, just think about it this way: you had it easier than the last generation. New technology is being developed every day that just makes our lives easier. Now, I'm sure you've heard the quote before, these kids and their goddamn phones. I cannot count the amount of times I've heard this quote, especially at the family functions. People would always be on my head for going on my phone. And you know what? I will admit, I'm pretty addicted to my phone. Like, it's bad. But can I say the same about the boomers and their TV? Can't I be like, oh, these boomers and their goddamn TV? It's the same fucking thing. You know, we're just consuming 2 different types of entertainment. And I've seen a lot of boomers go on their phone all the time too. Like, don't act like you're not addicted. Don't act like you're different just because you're a boomer. Like, sure, they're not on it as much as Gen Z is. There's some people racking up like 20 hours of screen time a day. But that's what the phone was designed to do. Is these apps and just the phone itself were designed to be super addicting. So anybody that uses it, no matter what their age is, they could get addicted to it. And now that Gen Alpha's on the come up right now, there's even more technology for them. As much as I make fun of like iPad babies, when they're growing up, there's no reason to hit them with a back in my day. We didn't have TikTok. We had Facebook, Snapchat, Uvu, and Kick. Like, who the fuck uses Uvu and Kick anymore? Like, those platforms are irrelevant as goddamn MySpace, not the streaming platform. I really don't want to get to the point where Wally was right and we're all fat as hell riding around on scooters. But one day technology will be so advanced that ends up becoming an option for people. And that kind of makes me wonder, will people have jobs or will robots just take our place by that time? And speaking of jobs, a lot of Gen Z is now old enough to get a job. And people on the news and shit are apparently saying that Gen Z is the most difficult generation to work with. And I guess it's because that people say that Gen Z is soft. And to be totally honest with you, yeah, there are a lot of soft people in Gen Z, and that's probably one of Gen Z's biggest problems. And it's not that Gen Z or any generation is more difficult to work with. It's that we were just raised in like 2 different time periods. We're in a time period where you could literally make your job anything thanks to the internet. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to do this. But when the boomers were growing up, it was like a requirement to go to college, or apparently you were like a failure or some shit. That's how most people in that generation and for the past couple of generations saw things. Now people in Gen Z are going crazy with social media. Like, there's people starting clothing brands at like 16 years old, or have a company worth millions of dollars at like 25. And it's crazy what the internet was able to do for people. But a lot of people in older generations, they don't really understand technology as well as we do. I mean, we grew up with it. Oh, is this gonna last you? You need a stable job, buddy. You need a stable income. But if you really think about it, nothing is stable. The person who's saying that could lose their job tomorrow, YouTube could just be like, you know what? Fuck you, Burdie. You're gone. So that's why it's really important to actually like what you do, because you're going to be stuck doing it for so many damn hours. And a lot of older generations just wanted a job, so they ended up just being stuck with something that they didn't like. Recently, I saw this video of a girl crying because she was working a 9-to-5 job. And what she said in the video is that, like, she really doesn't have much time to live life anymore. Like, she's stuck commuting for 2 hours and she has to work. And by the time she gets home, she's already tired. And some jobs don't even pay you enough to make ends meet. And a lot of people in the older generations were cooking her like, oh, I put up with this for 20 years. So that means you're just being a bitch and you're soft. Nobody wants to live a miserable ass life. You're put on this planet to enjoy your life, not to just work your soul away. And I know I'm not the one that really should be speaking on this topic. I mean, the most work experience I have is at a grocery store. And even from doing that, after every shift, I felt like I had the soul sucked out of me. It's not that Gen Z, quote, doesn't want to work. It's just we don't want to live miserable ass lives. But if working at a grocery store is your thing, I guess you do you. But personally, I don't want a Karen raging at me for putting something in the wrong bag. And of course, all the generations just complain about the one below them. That's kind of what it seems like. Like sometimes I hear my mom complaining about millennials at work. And you know what, man? In some cases, yeah, they were being airheads. And we all do airhead shit from time to time. It's a part of life. We're gonna make a mistake or say something really stupid at some point. A trend that I've seen that's getting more common is that, like, younger people are standing up for themselves in the workplace. Like, your boss is dead ass expecting you to do tricks on it, but it really should not get to that point where the relationship between you and your boss is like, oh yes, boss, oh, right away, and they're just yelling at you. No, like, it should just be a conversation between two civilized adults. That just makes it an overall stressful environment, which will make you age faster. Everybody's been saying Gen Z is aging really fast. There's a bunch of millennials yapping about how young they look compared to Gen Z. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter at all. When I was in school, I thought like people in certain grades above me look older than I did when I got to that grade. Like there's a whole Diary of a Wimpy Kid meme. It was like 6th graders then versus now. And if I'm being totally honest, I probably did look like this mole rat looking ass motherfucker in the 6th grade. This originally wasn't gonna go in the video at all, but this needs to be discussed. The quote, Gen X rise. So Eminem recently dropped a song where he just disses Gen Z the entire song, right? And this is how Eminem thought people were gonna react. But in reality, nobody gave a fuck, okay? Nobody cared. Eminem was pretty much just fighting against the brick wall. He said in the song that, like, Gen Z is soft, and he said, are you gonna cancel me? Gen Z me, bro. That was, like, the corniest line I've ever heard. So, of course, Gen X started this trend where they put on some filter that had an X on it and said, Gen X rise on
Gen X rise.
And now Gen X was born in like the late 60s, 70s. So if you're in Gen Z like I am, they're probably around your parents' age. Imagine your parents doing some stupid shit like that, bro. I would not let this shit slide. I don't know if their kids like just taught them how to use a TikTok filter and then they just went crazy. I'm not entirely sure, but Gen Z does not care. You know, we're not sitting here thinking about Gen X. We're not going to bed at night thinking about Gen X. I'm not having a war with my own parents. These select people in Gen X, they're fighting their own battle. We don't care. We're not participating. These people are saying stupid ass shit like they, quote, poked the bear. It's too late now, man. We're done. The bear has been poked. I don't want to know what these Gen Xers are capable of. To think that this is all over an Eminem song, or at least that's what I'm hearing. And we all grew up with Eminem music. Like, we don't hate Eminem. No one hates Eminem. Like, that is like a huge misconception. Maybe only people that are like really soft hate him because of the things he says in his songs. Bro, I think at this point, Eminem should just retire. Like, he's in his 50s. He's made a lot of money. If I were him, me personally, I would have been dipped by now. And this dude has been rapping since before I was born. There's only so long I would be able to do that. But I mean, if that's what he likes doing, I guess. Do it. I don't know. But there's even people saying that, like, we should be afraid of Gen X. I don't know why we would be afraid of them. I guess the argument of like the last generation having it harder than us kind of falls into play here as well. I guess that's the reasoning as to why we should be afraid of them. We should cower in fear when we see Gen X. Now, another point I wanted to bring up was the pressures in this generation to move fast. Now, of course, just for context, people in older generations would just breeze through life. Like, they would buy a house at 20, get married at 21, have a family at 22. They were settling down in their early 20s. To be honest with you, I really don't see myself doing all that till my 30s. But now people are deciding to settle down a lot later, as they should. There's some cases where somebody in older generations like, oh my God, are they gonna get married yet? What are these kids waiting for nowadays? I don't see why it's a huge deal to some people because it really is no rush. And sometimes people will get on their heads for like living with their parents in their 20s. And honestly, shit, that's a good thing, bro. You gotta stack up your bread while you can until you financially feel ready to move out. Like, you shouldn't feel pressure because, oh, your Uncle Billy, you know, he moved out when he was 20 years old. Like, you know what I mean? Like, fuck Uncle Billy. Who cares what he's doing? You're living your own life. It's not a fucking speed run who can have a family and settle down the fastest. Now, I talked about this a little bit earlier in the video, but I wanted to bring it up later. It's about like Gen Z and millennials being sensitive. Boomers love to say that Gen Z and millennials are like really sensitive. And like I said, you know, in some cases it can be very true. There are some sensitive ass motherfuckers in this generation. They can't even look at a Starbucks cup without having a freak out. But sometimes they forget that they were the ones who raised this generation. Even though you may think things were, quote, better back in your day, and the millennials whine too much or whatever, they can't do shit on their own, these goddamn millennials. Because in this generation, there was a lot of helicopter parents that were just watching over their kids 24/7. Like, if Life 360 existed back then, like, it was raps, bro. There's no way they would have survived. And if you're raised by a helicopter parent, you don't really learn how to live on your own or do stuff on your own because they don't slowly let go. They just keep watching over you. And they just treat you like a kid your entire life. But I've also seen, like, hate coming from the other side where, like, Gen Z and millennials think that boomers ruined society for whatever reason. Every generation is going to fuck up at some point. It happens. In my generation, yeah, there's a shit ton of vape addicts. We're all addicted to our phones. Our attention spans are cooked. You know, we're not perfect either. Like, I can't even read a fucking book, bro. I really don't want to get into it, but some people say that they, like, ruin the environment and the economy, and the boomers counter that by saying they're sensitive and they can't do shit. So, to be honest with you, at this point, it's a never-ending cycle that I'm gonna be sitting on the sidelines and just watching, munching on a bucket of popcorn, because there shouldn't be beef between people because of what year they were born. Like, that's crazy. It doesn't make you better than anybody else.